Okay, in this video, we're going to focus on one of the key differentiators of the data transformation engine, and the focus is on data transformation. So when we talk about simplify data transformation, well, we really mean it, right? Our goal here was to eliminate a lot of the overhead and complexity that you get with a lot of the platforms out there that require huge investments in terms of licensing, and then major investments in terms of people power, right? Whether it's third-party consultants or whether it's hiring and training from within, there's a lot of complexity that needs to be navigated. So let's talk about how we transform data in our engine. So we think of things in terms of flows. Sometimes they're referred to as pipelines. You can consider them interchangeable. A flow to us exists at a level below what you would think of as an interface. So in this case, we're going to think about an AS400 sales system going to, let's say, Oracle Financials, right? Or some other target. It doesn't really matter. To us, a flow is going from one source to one target. Of course, you can have as many flows as necessary. In that way, you can go one source to many targets or many sources to one target, right? Again, it's a function of setting up what we call flows. So in this demo system, we'll see a list of existing flows, right? And this is the one we're going to talk about today, okay? Which is a pretty straightforward. This is a really simple use case, right? But I'll highlight some things as we go here. So for starters, you can see sort of the basic information, the source, the target. In this case, we're going from an SFTP to a file share, right? And of course, all the parameters around those two source and targets. The scheduling, right? So in this case, this one runs every 30 minutes, and it's going to look on that SFTP server for this qualifier, see if there's a new date time stamped data file that hasn't been retrieved yet. It'll pull it in and run it through the engine. Okay, and I'm not going to get into the details today of how we set all that up, just to say that you can easily see the flows you have constructed here, and then being able to do things like, for example, if I want to review and test a flow, I could run a test file, and again, I'll cover that in more detail in another session. The primary driver of this process as it comes through our engine is then what we call mapping sheets, right? So mapping sheets is how we transform data, okay? So a mapping sheet, and again, we'll look at an existing one so you could get a sense of how it works, right? You've got essentially the source information, source column name, and of course, where's it going to? So how are we reformatting it in some cases, taking it from CSV to pipe or etc. And then the real secret sauce in how we manage this, what we call low-code environment, is on these ingestion rules, right? So that's piece number one. Okay, so it's the complexity is behind the scenes in terms of how we handle the data, right? So it could be it could be that we built a custom rule to concatenate certain fields within a row, okay, and that could be a custom rule number 0005, for example. But in any event, in knowing what these rules do, allow people to create, modify, and update these mapping sheets very easily. And of course, the beauty here is that if you have changes to the source or changes to the target, you're not coding, you're not building software on top of those systems. You're coming in here to modify what needs to happen to the data. Okay. And then we're putting a rule in place. And the other two key things that we're going to focus on here is this source column required and the ingestion rule value, right? So in a very simple practice, if you've got a date format in one system that is month, day, year, and you need it to be day, month, year, of course, this is how you would do that and use the date rule, and that would force the change in the data for the target system. And the other thing is you can specify, for example, in a string rule, I want it to, it's going to look and make sure that there are two characters associated with that string. All right, so if this said, here's actually a better example. In this case, if that string is not 12 characters, but it's source column required, it's going to trigger an error. Okay, well, we're going to talk about error handling, etc. in a separate session, but wanted to give you an idea of how mapping sheets work. Now, this source ingestion rule could be any number of things. It could be calling a stored procedure. It could be calling an API, right? And in fact, we can even do that at the flow level, right? So it doesn't have to be a FTP site, SFTP site to a file server. It can be hitting a database directly, or it can be calling an API. So that is really the nuts and bolts of the data transformation piece. Without getting into too much detail, you can see here I can download this to Excel. I can reformat it and then upload it, or I could make my changes right in here. In any event, when you're doing versioning of different flows, you can start with this version. So this is also great for documenting these flows and how what the transformations that you're trying to capture as you're moving data from a source to a target. And we'd love to talk about specific use cases with you. This is a very straightforward and simple one, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how we handle data transformation. Thank you.